Hi folks, this is Bluffdale Garage. I just got through doing a video changing out some rotors and brake pads on a 2004 Nissan Maxima. I'm going to post that video as soon as I can. I ran out of card memory, but I got most of it. Now I'm going to show you how to fix this little blackmax 3000 watt portable generator with a Honda motor on it. It leaks oil like you cannot believe, and I've already taken it apart. Reason being is because I like to do things off of video, so you guys don't have to watch me learn, you know, how to take things apart, because not everybody knows everything. So I've already taken it pretty much apart, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to disassemble it and show you what I got down to and what I found with this little generator, which is quite odd to me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start for you. I'll walk in front of this camera and I'll start pulling it apart. It's not going to take very long. It's basically put together by hand, and here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull off the pull starter, which is not even bolted on. Okay, set that aside. Next thing is we're going to pull off this little cover for the flywheel. That's not bolted on either. These kind of things you can figure out real easy. So here's your ignition coil. Goes up to the spark plug. It's pretty self-explanatory. This bolt right here is long enough to go in and hold it in over the top of the magneto. And this one's short enough, of course. This goes on this side, this one goes on this side. The reason this one is long is because it comes out long enough to hold that red cover on, and then to also hold your pull start onto that. That's why this one's on the right hand side. It's only hand tight, so I'm going to pop it out for you. Throw it in the box. I always try to tell you in my videos to keep all of your parts close together. Throw them in a box. Use a magnet. Use any kind of container. Don't just throw them on a bench. You know, number one is for memory. The number two reason is because you lose one bolt and it can cost you 3 days. Anyhow, okay, those two bolts are out. We're down to where we're going to take this coil off. First of all, I'll unplug it off of the spark plug. Pretty simple. One wire. It's a spade connector right here. Insulated. We're going to go ahead and just pop her off with our fingers. Okay. Now, this little thing here, we don't need to completely remove it because it's not really going to be in the way. You can if you want. This is just a little plastic clip that slips into a hole into this bracket. I'm just going to slip it behind like that right there. There's not too much stress on the wire because it doesn't weigh a lot, so it won't put any stress on anything, and pop this connector off. Okay, we'll just get that out of the way. Now I've already broken this loose. Now here's something that you need to know. This is not easy to get off. You can go rent a puller. Myself, I used a great big chain wrench very carefully because of these cooling fins right here. Okay? And then this nut in the center, of course, is very tight. So I had to put I'm going to go get the chain wrench and basically show you what I done with a chain wrench. Hold on one second. Okay, so this engine, like almost all engines, spins in a clockwise position. So your crankshaft nut, which is right here, just like any engine right in the center, comes off counterclockwise. So you take your chain wrench, if you're going to use a chain wrench, and I had to be very careful because this is very fragile aluminum around here. If I'm not careful, I'm going to screw it up. Or I can mar this magneto, and that'll really screw things up. I mean, that's what makes this engine fire. It's magnetic. So anyhow, I very carefully spent my time putting this chain wrench around here, and you can figure out how they lock. Okay, now see, I put it on there with slack, and then as you put some pressure on there, these little teeth will bite into this. Okay, and this is made of aluminum, so it's going to be pretty hard to mar up this steel magneto. If you don't feel good about it, go ahead and put yourself a piece of tape in here or a rag. It makes you lose a little bit of traction on it, but it'll make you feel safer about marring up this magneto. So this is what I did. And then I looked all around to make sure these little link pins didn't get marred up in any part of the aluminum around the engine. And then I went and I got myself a, I believe this is a 3/4 inch nut here, and I used a deep well socket, and I used a leverage bar, and I pulled up on that sucker and I busted this loose. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I can get rid of this chain wrench now that I've showed you how to use it. Get that out of the way. I love this chain wrench, by the way, but you can't always use them. If you do get used to them, they come in really handy. I like them better than most pullers. 3-jaw and 4-jaw pullers, and they're hard to find and blah blah blah. Okay, there's the nut that holds this magneto on with the cooling fin on the outside. At this part right here is what starts this engine. That puller right here, okay, goes over there and has little attachments that hook inside of here so that when you pull that, it cranks that sucker in a clockwise position. I just dropped the nut, so I'm going to go ahead and grab it now so I don't forget about it. There we go. All right, now we're going to go ahead and take the cooling fins off. Crankshaft nut, we're going to go ahead and put that in the box. I've got one box here. Okay, and then this is what happened when I pulled this apart last night. I had to bang on it a little bit, very carefully with a rubber mallet. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam. Very carefully with a rubber mallet. If you don't have a rubber mallet, go ahead and use a piece of a 2x4 and a hammer, but just be very careful. Okay, here's our magneto. It's off. Reason it's called a magneto is because there's a magnet on it. Every time that passes a stator, well, we won't call it a stator. Every time it passes that coil, it energizes it and gives that spark plug right there a spark. It's the only time it does it is right there. Anyways, that's why that's called a magneto. Plus, it's also a flywheel. It makes this engine move with inertia. Okay, so this is what happened, is I pulled that off, and the guy brought this over and he says, this thing's leaking oil. It's a 2012. It's not an expensive generator. It's got a Honda engine on it. Honda's good stuff, but they also make a lower grade stuff that people can afford. And that seal literally was sitting like that. You could pick this engine up like this and oil would just pour out. And before I even tore it apart, I knew what was wrong. That the front main seal was shot. It was leaking. But come to my surprise, the thing wasn't even inside. It was just sitting there. So I grabbed it and I pulled it off. Let me look at my camera here and make sure that we've got a good shot. Okay, I think we're doing okay. Hopefully the audio is good too. Alright, so anyway, it took me a couple of days to find this little part because Honda they're really funny about the numbers that they use. And when I started looking for parts for the actual generator, which is a blackmax. And little to my surprise, I wasn't looking for a part for the blackmax. I was looking for a part for the engine that runs the generator, which is a Honda. And I finally found it today. And here's the new one. Now, you won't be able to see this on camera. With the naked eye, it's even hard to tell. Number one, when this was put in, probably from the manufacturer, in my opinion, I think they just did it's kind of got a flaw in it. It was either done by a human being, he didn't punch that in there enough, and it went through the production line long enough to work, and then once it got out to the customer, it fell out and it was done. Or the guy put too much oil in it that owns it, and the only way for that oil to escape was to pop this seal out, because I don't see any other way that this little tiny engine can burp out any oil. And if you fill an engine up with too much oil, it's got to go somewhere. Always. I don't care what engine you have. And they can go a lot of places. So anyhow, I went and bought this new seal, and with the naked eye, if you can see what I could see, this new seal is a little bit smaller on the inside than the old one. So you can tell that this old seal is wore out. Also, number two, the first thing I checked was that the crankshaft isn't wobbling back and forth, because that's another cause of a seal going bad. If you have a bad crankshaft bearing, and that thing sits there and goes like this, okay, it can be a crankshaft bearing, it can be the case that holds the crankshaft bearing, it could be all kinds of things internally inside of an engine. Well, this thing is tighter than tight gets. I just dropped that new seal. Okay. So, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to shut the camera off because you guys don't need to watch me do this. I'm going to go ahead and replace this new seal, but before I do that, I'm going to do a thorough cleaning all the way around the outside of this, the surrounding area, because I don't want any oil coming down, any contaminants. And I'm going to do a thorough cleaning inside of here, and it's probably going to be a good strong cleaner. I'll start out with maybe with a petrol, like some gasoline, vinegar, and get off the big residue, and then I'll go to a carb cleaner, and I'm going to use some clean rags. I'm going to spend some time cleaning this sucker up. And then I'll get it all cleaned up, and then I'll turn the camera back on for you, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to reinstall this. I'm going to use a sealant around here, and I'll tell you what kind it is. It's something that I just love. I've used it on many engines in all different kinds of vehicles, from snowmobiles to you name it. I've used it, and it's been pretty much foolproof. So I'm going to shut the camera off for now. I'll get this all clean, and then I'll turn it back on for you, and I'll install this sucker, and hopefully I'll get it all put back together, and I'll pull that rope and it'll start, and it won't leak any oil, and both of us will learn something. So go have a break for a while and then come back. I'll see you after a bit. Okay folks, I took a long break. It is now 12:30 my time. I'm up late, but that's pretty much what I do. I'm a night owl. I'm going to go ahead and finish showing you how to replace this seal on this little blackmax 3000 watt generator with a Honda engine. What I did is I cleaned everything up. I'm going to show you the chemicals that I used and kind of the process, go through it real quick. You don't have to sit here and watch me waste time doing it. So I done it all. I'm just going to show you what I did it with. Okay, I'm going to start this over again because my battery just took a big old, well, if there's any kids present, cover their ears. My batteries took a big old shit and didn't even warn me. So let's start again. I took the time without the camera going so you guys didn't have to watch me clean this thing, because I'll just explain what I did to you, or did to it for you. And it's just all common household items with an air compressor. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do this. So let me show you how I did it. Okay, I had a lot of oil, of course, because the seal wasn't even attached. It wasn't in the case. It wasn't around the camshaft, so it was just pouring out like no tomorrow. So the first thing I did is I mixed up pretty much I put about that much simple green in this bottle and the rest water. You could have used all simple green, but the reason I did it like that is because that's all I had left, but it's still really strong. I took it and I sprayed it from the top of this engine, and I let it float down all the way to the bottom, and I let it soak for about 10 minutes. And I took this brush, okay, standard ordinary paintbrush, but you can't use it for painting anymore because I use it for cleaning stuff like this. Comes in really handy now. Anyways, what that does is it gets anything that'll possibly leak down on you while you're trying to do a very clean job for a sill that has to be clean, that won't leak later on. That was the first thing I used. Okay, I'm going to set that down, get it out of the way. And what I did in between these chemicals that I used is I took a cotton swab along with my brush, and inside of here and these orifices where all of the oil passages go in and out, I took a cotton swab and just did what I could to get everything out of the insides of here. Like, you know, you don't want a lot of water and simple green and all that kind of stuff going in. It's not going to hurt your engine a lot, but it's also something you really don't want in there. So that's what I did, is I just took a standard common cotton swab, dabbed it all inside there. It'd get soaked. I turn it around, get a fresh end, do the same thing again. Blah, 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 blah. And then I take my air compressor and I blow all this out. And then my second stage, get yourself another spray bottle, straight vinegar. Man, I'll tell you what, vinegar is my favorite. I've done so many things about getting grease off of almost anything. Steel, aluminum, plastic, nice aluminum polished wheels that you would think you'd have to throw away and replace. You can fix them with this stuff right here, and a paintbrush and a little bit of elbow grease. Anyhow, this was my second stage. I sprayed it from the top to the bottom, just like I did with the simple green. Let it sit for a little bit. Took my paintbrush, you know, up and down, and got everything out of there. I mean, you could eat off of this. Did the same thing with my cotton swab. Got everything out of these orifices. Okay. Took an air compressor, blew it all out. Oh, and by the way, put safety glasses on, because that stuff comes right back out and hits you in the face. And it kind of burns a little bit. Got to be tough to do this stuff. Okay, here's the last thing that I did. This stuff is made for cleaning the ink off of printing presses. And I bought a whole case of this for $5. That's why I'm using it. You don't have to use this stuff. It would probably cost you about $12 to buy one can of this. But I'm using it because I got 12 of them for $5. And it's just like a brake cleaner, a carburetor cleaner. It's the last stage that you want to use to get everything out of there. Okay? This is what I used. And of course, again, I started from the top, sprayed everything really good. And what's really good about this stuff is as soon as you spray it on, get your paintbrush, you get up, do all of the top, okay, and get in this very important area, okay, and just wipe that around in there. and you just let it dissipate. You don't have to rinse this stuff off. You don't have to wipe it out with a rag or anything. It just evaporates. And as it's evaporating, it is taking all of the bull crap out of here. Okay. Like I said, you can do it with a carb cleaner. You can do it with a brake parts cleaner. Anything with that kind of strength. Starting fluid. It's all up to you. I buy the cheapest carb cleaner when I run out of this stuff. I've got 2 more cans. Once I'm done, I'll just buy the cheap carb cleaner. Okay, so then my seal is going to go inside of here, into this machine part that goes around the crankshaft. So I took this little, I can't remember what you call these, but they draw circles. You know, this little pin sticks down in the piece of paper like that, and it has a pencil on the other end, and you go, and you draw a circle, and cut it out, and whatnot. Anyhow, I took this very gently around the inside of this aluminum, and I took and felt to see if there was any debris or abrasions around the inside of there that were going to stop my seal from pressing all the way in there. Because it's very important that we get that seal all the way in there and flush and no leaks. Okay? And when I got done with that, if it happened to hit something that fell off, of course, I took my brush and went around again. Okay? I'm pretty anal about getting this stuff clean because I don't like to take it apart again, especially when it's a customer's generator and he calls me up and says, hey man, it's leaking again. I don't want that to happen. I want this to go, and I want this guy to have this run for a long time and be happy. Last thing, get the compressor out again, blow it all off, and then take yourself a flashlight and look at everything. Look at every orifice where all these oil passages are. Make sure there's no pieces of a paintbrush or a cotton swab or a rag or anything like that, or a whole bunch of water. Look inside all those. Take the time, do an inspection. One more time, take this crankshaft and move it sideways and back and forth and make sure that sucker's tight. Okay, it's not going to be so tight that you can't move it. It's going to have a little bit of movement in it. That's normal. But if this thing shakes up and down, you got problems. With this Honda engine, we don't. The problem we have is for some reason that seal came out of it. As I showed you before on the first video, excuse me, new seal. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put grease around this crankshaft. And the reason being that I'm going to put this around first is because it's not going to cure. It's grease. It's going to stay grease. It's not going to get hard. It's going to stay greasy. And you want it on there to coat this. You don't want to put this on dry. Okay? Because this is going to sit inside of there. This crankshaft's going to move, and you don't want this dry, because if you put that on there dry, it's going to put heat to this without any lubricant, and it's going to put wear and tear on it prematurely. And it'll take the seal out before it's supposed to. So what we're going to do, first I'm going to take a sip of coffee. I am human. It's 12:30. I got to have some caffeine. And a cough. Okay, I'll reach over here and I'm going to grab your standard wheel bearing grease. I'm using this Coastal. You guys can use whatever you want, you know, suitable for GM, Chrysler, European, and Japanese vehicles. There's only two kinds of grease that I ever use. Typically I use marine grease, but I don't have any right now. I love marine grease because it keeps water out. But I don't have any right now, so I'm just going to use this. And of course this isn't going to get water unless the guy wants to wash it, or it sits in the rain, but it still won't get a lot of water in this area. So you're just going to take a little dab of it with your finger. You're going to go ahead and make a nice little circle all the way around that crankshaft. Wow, I have a little mouse just bouncing around down here by my feet. A little buddy. Of course, I live in a 80-year-old house with horses and skunks and deer and raccoons and porcupines and ducks and dogs and cats that don't do anything about killing the mice. Anyhow, there's our grease. Okay, now I don't want to get any of that stuff